Whether from climate change, the drive for resource extraction, or tensions with global competitors such as Russia, the Arctic is increasingly a strategic pressure point. How should this country position itself on these and other issues? Michael Byers is the Canada Research Chair in Global Politics and International Law at the University of British Columbia and author of 2 books on the Arctic, and he joins us now for more. It's good to have you in that chair.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
You are a friend of the program, I guess we could say. You've been on numerous times, but when's the last time you've been in this studio?
Oh, it's been more than a decade.
There you go. Long overdue for a visit, I would say. Let's start with this. How has the government led by Justin Trudeau approached Arctic policy, in your view, compared to, say, the way Stephen Harper's government did it 5 years ago?
Well, Stephen Harper made the Arctic part of his brand. So it was all about use it or lose it, and the true north strong and free. And Stephen Harper made lots of very bold promises to strengthen Canada's military capabilities in the Arctic. So the Arctic was portrayed as a place of threat with sovereignty at risk from countries like Russia. Justin Trudeau has not taken on any of that Arctic brand. But he's actually done more than Stephen Harper ever did in terms of actually investing in the Arctic. Because those military promises that Stephen Harper made were never fulfilled during his mandate. We're starting to see a few trickle-on effects now, Arctic offshore patrol ships perhaps coming into service within the next year or two. But most of it was electioneering on the part of Stephen Harper. It wasn't real. Now, Justin Trudeau isn't investing a lot in the Arctic, but he's putting an effort, he's putting some money into the issues that really count, which are addressing the social and economic crisis in Arctic communities. He's working with Inuit and First Nations leaders to try to deal with the epidemic of suicide, endemic tuberculosis across the Canadian North, things that actually have real-life impacts here and now on Canadian citizens in that region.
Just to put those comments into context, we should point out, or maybe remind those who do remember, you're a former candidate for office for the New Democratic Party. So you don't have any particular axe to grind with either of these guys, or you're not here to carry water for either of these guys either. You're looking at this from your analytical point of view.
Yeah, and I think it's possible to have been a political candidate and to be a serious objective academic, especially given that 11 years are now past.
Is it 11 years since you last ran?
11 years.
Oh my gosh, I didn't realize it was that long. Okay, before the last election, the Trudeau government did put out Canada's Arctic and Northern Policy Framework. What is the gist of that?
Well, there is no gist to the Arctic and Northern Policy Framework because, and here I'm going to be critical of the Trudeau government. The Trudeau government sought to make this the perfect example of their commitment to consultation. And so they consulted with everyone on everything concerning the North. It became not just the Arctic Policy Framework, but the Northern Policy Framework, and more stakeholders were included. And I read the successive drafts of this framework as they were being produced, and it became larger and more hydra-headed and confusing as things went on because everyone's input was included in the document.
Isn't that a good thing?
Well, it is, except at some point it has to be made coherent. It actually has to have actionable recommendations. And the Trudeau government ran out of time. And ultimately, just before the last federal election, they released a document that they called the Arctic and Northern Policy Framework. But it wasn't a single document. There was a chapter written by Global Affairs Canada, another separate chapter written by the Department of National Defence with no apparent connections between these two chapters. And then there were chapters that had been submitted by the 3 territorial governments and the National Inuit Organization. So a compilation of separate chapters, each reflecting particular inputs, interests, recommendations, but no coherency whatsoever.
Now that they're back in, do you look forward to more coherence going forward?
I would hope so. Obviously, it's a minority government, so the time frames are a bit shorter in terms of actually implementing policy. But there is some significant hope that they've learned from this process that at some point you have to take control and with all the information you've gathered, assimilate that and come out with actionable policies. And that's what we're waiting for now. are actionable policies. As I said, they put some money into addressing the social and health and economic crises of Arctic communities, but there's no coherent framework. There's no, how do we get to improvements in 5, 10, 20 years' time? There's no plan.
Do you think we need to spend more money on defending the Arctic?
No. The Arctic is a really big place, and unlike the Antarctic, the Arctic is centered on an ocean, a large, deep, mostly ice-covered ocean that's in total darkness for months each year and still covered seasonally by shifting sea ice. It's a cold, dark, dangerous place. Russia is a long way away. It's on the other side of this ocean, and Russia has lots of the Arctic to itself on the other side of this ocean. Russia is, after all, the largest country in the world. They have no interest in the Canadian Arctic.
Do you know what? We've got a map here. Let's show this. And it's funny how our views of the world often depend on how we look at the map of the world. We're so accustomed to seeing North and South America on the left, and then Europe, Asia, Africa, Oceania on the right. Here's a view from the top. And for those listening on podcast, I'm going to describe this somewhat, because the way Michael Byers just described it is really quite accurate. That's the view of the world from the top. There's the Arctic Ocean, massive in scale. There's Canada on the left-hand side, and there's Russia on the right. And if you look at the world from that point of view, Michael, is it not reasonable to infer that when you look at the world that way, Canada and Russia are rivals for a particular part of real estate on this planet?
Well, you could say that they're neighbors.
Or neighbors, okay.
Separated by a very large pond called the Arctic Ocean, which is thousands of kilometers across.
But given the cultural differences between our two countries and the geopolitical differences as well, are we not, is it not more accurate to say that we're more rivals than neighbors for this part of the world?
Well, given that neither Canada nor Russia needs or wants more Arctic territory or more maritime zones, we actually are partners on the things that are of common interest. Search and rescue. We cooperate very closely with Russia in search and rescue, including with satellite-based search and rescue in a system that Canada and the Soviet Union set up in 1979. We work very closely on Arctic science with Russia. We've got serious problems with Russia in other parts of the world, in Ukraine, in the Middle East. But in the Arctic, Russia is behaving itself, and Canada has every interest in cooperating with Russia. For both these countries, the Arctic is an incredibly expensive place in which to operate. To weaponize the Arctic would bankrupt both countries. Vladimir Putin knows this. He's a rational actor. I'm sure he has no particular fondness for Canada, but he knows that he needs to work with us on some issues, and he has an awful lot on his plate elsewhere in the world.
Indeed. Let me ask you about whether or not you think there are others in the neighborhood who are similarly behaving themselves, to use your words. Denmark, Norway, United States, how are they all behaving?
Oh, we get along very well with Denmark and Norway. And remember, Denmark is our most significant Arctic neighbor because of Greenland, the largest island in the world that's not a continent in its own right. So we work very closely. You can see Greenland from parts of Canada. That's how close it is. We work very well with them. We're of course partners in NATO with both Denmark and Norway. We participate in exercises in Norway as part of NATO. So there's a very strong allegiance there. The United States is, of course, our traditional partner, our most important neighbor. It's a bit less predictable than Denmark and Norway these days.
You think?
Yes. And there have been some signs from the US that they're thinking about the Arctic in more competitive terms. Mike Pompeo gave a speech at Rovaniemi, Finland earlier this year that suggested that he saw Russia and China as threats in the Arctic. There was even a suggestion that he wanted to challenge Canada's claim in the Northwest Passage. The professional bureaucrats back in the State Department would have dampened down those ideas pretty quickly, because Canada and the United States do work very closely in the Arctic, and we haven't actually had a dispute over sovereignty there that has been of any problem since 1985.
Do we know whether American submarines go into the Arctic without our permission?
Well, we wouldn't want to know, because if we knew, that might be a legal problem. Look, they're our closest ally. We work with them on maritime surveillance, the aerial defense of North America. Do U.S. submarines go through the Northwest Passage? Probably. But will we know? Not unless one of them has an accident and needs to be rescued by the Canadian Coast Guard.
So better to have sort of plausible deniability about the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's not a problem, right? Because they are our closest ally.
Okay. You mentioned China in the midst of that last answer, a couple of answers ago, and you know, that was a country that I had not put on the list earlier, but let's put it on the list now. Do you see China as being in any way problematic to the future of the Arctic vis-a-vis Canada's interests?
Well, China has Arctic interests. It has a global interest in securing natural resources, and it already secures natural resources from the Canadian Arctic. There's a Chinese-owned mine in northern Quebec. There's a mine on Baffin Island that ships iron ore occasionally to China. So China has a resource interest. It's getting those resources through international trade, through foreign investment. It has no interest in conquering Canada, no more interest than it has in conquering countries in Africa or Latin America, where it also sources its resources. The other interest that China has is that China is the world's largest shipping state. It depends on commercial shipping for its economy to a vast extent, and it looks at the Arctic and it sees shipping routes opening up due to climate change. Climate change is more advanced in the Arctic than anywhere else on Earth, and for the most part that has very negative consequences for the Arctic. But one possible positive is that routes like the Northern Sea Route along the coast of Russia, the Northwest Passage through northern Canada are beginning to open up, and that is opening up the possibility of access to resources in the Arctic and to shipping routes that might connect, for instance, the Pacific to the Atlantic Ocean in ways that are shorter than the canals that are used further south, the Panama Canal, the Suez Canal.
You know, everybody who keeps an eye on the Canadian-Chinese relationship right now says that it may not be the worst that it's ever been, but if it isn't, it's pretty darn close to the worst it's ever been right now. And I wonder how concerned you are about that relationship poisoning what, so far, it sounds like you're describing as a pretty positive relationship between Canada and China as it relates to the Arctic. Do you worry about contagion?
No, I don't. In fact, I see opportunity. I see diplomatic opportunity. So I mentioned that during the Cold War, we partnered with the Soviet Union on Arctic search and rescue. We also shipped a lot of grain to the Soviet Union and later to China. So during times of increased tension, it's often quite useful to find areas or regions where there is less tension and there's an opportunity to cooperate, to maintain the channels of communication, to build confidence. So in times of crisis, the Arctic becomes a place that we can work with Russia and work with China to ensure that the relationship does not go on to a war footing, that it's still an interdependency. And a lot of scholars write about this, that our interconnected world is a major bulwark against armed conflict, that China and the United States won't go to war because their economies are too closely linked, that Russia won't go to war because it depends economically on exporting natural gas to the European Union. So we're so closely tied that armed conflict does not become a viable option. Well, let's keep those ties close in the Arctic, because the Arctic is a long way away from Ukraine, from the Middle East, from the South China Sea. It's a place where we can work together. And that indeed is what Canadian diplomats have been seeking to do.
Let's get parochial for a second. How much does climate change affect how Canada sees its relationship with the North and what it potentially would like to achieve vis-a-vis the North?
Well, climate change is the big dark cloud that hangs over everything. When we talk about the Arctic, when we talk about the world. And we're seeing changing weather patterns in southern Canada that are linked to things that are happening in the Arctic, that are linked to climate change melting the sea ice, exposing more and more open water in the Arctic Ocean. And we're going to see more of that. The Arctic is not separate climatically. It's part of the reality in which we live here in southern Canada. And that's bad news. In the Arctic itself, the people who live there are struggling. Their traditional way of life is being taken away by climate change. The sea ice is not only melting. When the ice is there, it's unpredictable. It can be rotten and dangerous. So Inuit hunters go through the sea ice on their snowmobiles, paying the ultimate price for climate change. So access to that traditional way of life, to traditional food sources, which are still really important in Arctic communities, all that is being compromised. And that then feeds into the social and health crises that we're seeing also. Is there opportunity? Yes, improved access to resources on the ocean, but less easy access on land, because guess what? The permafrost is melting. The ice roads can't last for as long in the winter because the lakes are melting earlier. So access to resources on land is actually getting worse. Access on the water is getting better. Is that a plus or a minus in terms of the ultimate calculation? Only time will tell. What I tell people is that there is major opportunity in the Arctic for a country like Canada because we've neglected it for so long. This is 40% of the second largest country on Earth. And this is a place where dreams can be made, where governments can define real goals and implement real action. So we do need improved infrastructure in the Arctic. We do need to raise the living standards of Northern Canadians to those that are expected in Southern Canada. And we need to revitalize the national pride that Canadians for decades had in thinking themselves as an Arctic country. And there's a lot there for us to do. And what I sometimes challenge people to imagine is what another country would do with the opportunity that we have in the Arctic.
A more ambitious country, you mean?
A more ambitious country. And one can actually go to other Arctic countries. One can go to Norway. One can go to Greenland and see the amazing things they've done in terms of the quality of life that they provide to citizens there, the tourism that takes place in northern countries. Much of it much more environmentally friendly than natural resource extraction. Places like Finland and Norway and Iceland have made tourism, Arctic tourism, a multi-billion-dollar industry. And I can go on and on. So there really is opportunity in the Arctic. We have to be careful to balance that with a sense of the challenge and responsibility. This is not easy, but we're a G7 country, right? This is something we should be able to do, that we should be able to embrace. And so coming back to the new government in Ottawa, yes, it's a minority government, but you put forward a serious agenda for developing the Arctic in partnership with Indigenous peoples in an environmentally responsible way. And you get a lot of buy-in from other parties. The Bloc Québécois comes from an Arctic province. Quebec is 1/3 Arctic, right? The NDP now holds the only seat in Nunavut, right? So they're in this big time. And the Conservative Party wants to see economic development. It wants to see the development of Canada's natural resources. Well, the Arctic is a really good place to do that.
Lots of incentive always around for people to get along on this one.
Yes.
Good. That's Michael Byers. He's the Canada Research Chair in Global Politics and International Law at UBC. And Michael, we're delighted you made some time for us here in Upper Canada this week. Good to see you again.
It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Agenda with Steve Paikin is brought to you by the Chartered Professional Accountants of Ontario. CPA Ontario is a regulator, an educator, a thought leader, and an advocate. We protect the public. We advance our profession. We guide our CPAs. We are CPA Ontario. And by viewers like you. Thank you.